All right, here we are. So we're at Toldot, and our Haftarah for Toldot in the Eitz Chaim Chumash is found on page 163. And in Tanakh in general, this is Malachi, the prophet Malachi, and it starts with chapter 1 of the prophet Malachi. So I don't know what editions people have, but that's where we are. So a little background about Malachi himself, and you have a whole page, in the Eitz Chaim, of course, to give context. Malachi is one of the is the last prophet in the list of prophets that we get. So he lives in around the middle of the 5th century BCE. So he lives about 100 years after the destruction of the first temple, right? So the destruction of the first temple, 586. So he's in the 400s, and he is seeing the beginning of the reestablishment of the Second Commonwealth. Haggai, Zechariah, and Malachi are the 3 prophets that live at this period of time. They're the last 3 prophets that are included in our collections of literary prophets, and the end of the book of prophets, and then we go into the book of writings. So Malachi is the last one, and although not necessarily, they're pretty much all at the same time, Haggai, Zechariah, and Malachi. And he is watching the new development of the Jewish community as it has reestablished itself with the permission of the Persian authorities under Ezra and Nehemiah, and the temple has been reestablished, and the temple service has been reestablished. So the sacrifices are going on again, and the priests and the Levites are doing their job again. Things are, back to the way they should be, right? And yet, so part of the prophecies of these 3 prophets, Haggai, Zechariah, Malachi, are the celebration of the renewal of this situation. But now what we're going to read in Malachi is that he's not so impressed with the way things are going in the Jewish commonwealth, in the Jewish religious and ethical life, but mostly religious life of the people. So that's who Malachi is, and that's who is chosen for our reading today. The Torah reading itself is, another good one of the top 54 Torah readings of all time, and that's all the right. Got it. Thank you. So, and it's about the birth of Jacob and Esav, and then their rivalry and the whole struggle back and forth, even from the time that they're in their mother's womb. And Rivka gets a word from God that this is unfortunately what she has to do. She has to carry these 2 warring nations. And then, of course, we have the famous, I'm skipping all there's all kinds of stuff about Isaac, and Isaac setting himself up as a significant player in his region, and he gets harassed by the king of Gerar, and then afterwards the king of Gerar recognizes that he's very successful, and he makes a covenant with Isaac, and Isaac is creating wealth and digging wells for his flocks and so on. He's a thriving, prospering leader, and then he gets old. And then we have the very famous, which takes practically all of the attention in the Torah reading, to he's got to give the blessing to the next generation. He's got to pass on the leadership to the next heir. And then we have the struggle back and forth between Esav and Jacob gets the blessing by being dressed up as Esav, and then Esav is distraught and wants to kill Jacob, and of course Jacob has to run away, and that's the end of the Torah reading. So I skipped a lot of stuff, but that's sort of basically just to remind us of what's going on. Yeah.
I
Okay,
have a question.
sure.
So in terms of the times that Malachi lived in, the temple had been destroyed and not yet rebuilt, but yet they were acting as if
No, he was seeing that the temple had been rebuilt.
the
That
temple had been rebuilt.
maybe it
Okay.
wasn't fully rebuilt. They started by rebuilding the altar and by setting out the precinct of the temple. I mean, this is all described in the book of Ezra and Nehemiah. And then they kept on building the temple, but they already had the altar to start,
Okay,
resuming.
so we're back in action. We're moving
Right.
towards that and all of that.
Right,
Okay,
right.
all right,
But
thank you.
thank you for saying that, because this is what I want to say one more thing. And of course, Jacob, just to, tell everybody, give away what's going to happen later in the future, Jacob is going to get a new name, right? He's going to get a new name, Israel. Esav gets a new name from the beginning. He is called Esav, and he's also called Edom, right? And Edom means the red one, right? And red becomes the whole.
Just froze.
So Edom is a people. They continue to be a.
You keep freezing.
Their internet connection isn't so great. He continues to be a people, and Israel and Edom, generations, centuries later, are not friends. And indeed, when the first temple was destroyed, Edom was on the side of those who were supporting the destruction of the temple. And I'm going to read to you a psalm. This is Psalm 137. And this is a psalm traditionally, some people say this every day when in benching. On Shabbat, we sing Shir Hamalot, right? So we have that psalm. But during the week, we have this psalm. This is Psalm 137. It's called Al Naharot Bavel, Sham Yashavnu Gam Bachinu B'Zochrenu Et Zion. By the rivers of Babylon, there we sat and wept as we thought of Zion. There on the poplars we hung up our lyres, for our captors asked us there for songs, our tormentors asked us for amusement. Sing for us one of the songs of Zion. How can we sing a song of God on alien soil? If I forget you, O Jerusalem, let my right hand wither. Let my tongue stick to my palate. If I cease to think of you, if I do not keep Jerusalem in memory, even at my happiest hour. Right? So this is a psalm of mourning for the loss of Jerusalem as people are sitting by the rivers of Babylon in exile. And then it goes as follows. Remember, O Lord, against the Edomites, the day of Jerusalem's fall, how they cried out, destroyer, destroyer, to her very foundations. So this is in the national memory that Edom was cheering on the Babylonian destroyers and going, yeah, get them, right? So remember, O Lord, how the Edomites on the day of Jerusalem's fall, how they cried this out. Fair Babylon, you predator, a blessing on him who repays you in kind what you have inflicted on us. A blessing on him who seizes your babies and dashes them against the rocks. Right? So this is a cry of revenge against their oppressors, that we can't do it. We are powerless, but we hope somebody is going to come and give you what you deserve. And Edom is included in that, to borrow an old phrase, that axis of evil. Right? Edom was delighted to see us being destroyed and exiled. Okay, so we have to remember that is a living memory that Malachi is part of. Okay, now let's go to our Haftarah. So it's Malachi, chapter 1, starting from verse 1. And by the way, Malachi, we call that his name, the prophet Malachi, but Malachi really is Malachi, my messenger, my Malach.
Oh,
And it's not clear whether that's really his name or it's just he's being called. God says, this prophet is my messenger. Okay. Go ahead. So who's going to read? Who's going to read for us? Malachi chapter. All right. Thank you, Sarita.
Okay. A pronouncement. The word of the Lord to Israel through Malachi. I have shown you love, said the Lord. But you ask, how have you shown us love? After all, declares the Lord, Esau is Jacob's brother, yet I have accepted Jacob and have rejected Esau. I have made his hills a desolation, his territory a home for beasts of the desert. If Edom thinks, though crushed, we can build the ruins again, thus said the Lord of hosts, they may build, but I will tear down. And so they shall be known as the region of wickedness, the people damned forever of the Lord. Your eyes shall behold it, and you shall declare, great is the Lord beyond the borders of Israel.
Okay. So do we have any connection to our Torah reading?
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Jacob and
Absolutely.
Esau. I mean, yeah.
Right, here it is. Jacob and Esau is put right out there, and Esau and Edom are the same. And so that nation of Edom is being really admonished here and cursed out. And the word that is in verse 2 is again, the translation is tries to make it less boring, but unfortunately then you lose echoes. The word that is repeated again and again in verse 2 is ahavti, I loved. So we have ahavti etchem, amar Hashem. I loved you, said the Eternal. And then you say, bameh ahavtanu, in what way did you love us? And then the answer is, Halo ache savli Yaakov. Well, isn't Esav a brother to Jacob? Nu'um Hashem. So says, proclaims the Eternal, Va'ohav et Yaakov. And the translation we have here, I have accepted Jacob, but it's stronger than that.
Love.
I have loved Jacob. Right. So this is the strong statement that comes back to the very struggle that the Torah reading tells us all about, right? Who is the one who's chosen? Who is the one who God wants to be the one to continue the line, to continue the mission that God first chose Abraham to bring into the world, and God says, hello, I could have chosen Esau, and I didn't. Now, what other echoes besides that do we have, even in those words from our Torah reading? Does anybody remember what was going on? What was going on between Isaac and Rebekah, the two parents?
deceit,
What?
deceit.
Wait, but let's not jump so much.
Okay,
Let's go to
Isaac loved Jacob,
yeah, exactly.
and Rebecca loved Jacob.
Right. So look at page 147 in the Eitz Chaim, Genesis 25, chapter 25, verse 28. Somebody have that?
Yeah.
Andy?
Uh,
Go ahead.
Isaac favored Esau because
Okay, and
he
the
had
word favored, the word favored in Hebrew,
it's
vaye'ahav, he loved. Go ahead.
because he had a taste for game, but Rebecca loved Jacob.
Right. That's the word. Right. So when God says in the Malachi text, I love Jacob, right? Implication, and not Esau, right? That harkens back to this parental difference, right? Isaac did love Esau. Rebekah loved Jacob. And God says, I was on Rebekah's side. Right? This is I'm voting for Rebekah. Right? So, and then verse 3, I hated. The word here is rejected, but also saneti, means is the opposite of ahavti, back in Malachi. And Esau, I hated. How do I show that I hated Esau? Because Esau's land now is desolate, right? Edom, at this period in history, is not in good shape. Eventually, they get actually exiled themselves, and they lose their land, and they end up actually going into what we would call the Negev, right? The land of Israel, and they get sort of relocated over there. But here, so this is Malachi showing, look around. You know, what we see in front of our very eyes is God's plan being put into practice, and he's, behind that is the idea. Look at us. We got God brought us back to our homes. God brought us back to our to our temple. How could you not say that God doesn't love us, or how does God love us? But let's take note that Malachi is reporting an attitude within the Jewish community, right? Within the Judean community, which is saying what? I don't know that you're telling me God loves us. Well, I don't know that God loves us. Va'amartem in verse 2, and you ask, how have you shown us love? I don't feel much of God's love anywhere. So that's already the beginning of what we're going to find in the rest of the Haftarah, is the difference between God giving us love and us feeling it. And if we don't feel the love, then we think, that reality is, entitles us to act a certain way. Right? That's part of the paradox. Okay.
So this troubles me.
Yeah.
It's particularly when you point out that, we're using really strong language. It isn't just, for instance, going back to the Torah portion, that each parent favored another one. It's that they loved, right? Does that imply that they didn't love the other? And here it's about loving and even hating. And it's like, why? I mean, why would Esau be so hated? I always reacted this way to Cain and Abel. I mean, why did one get so favored, so loved, and the other get so rejected? And what does that do to you when you are the one rejected, but also when you're in that kind of relationship, right? That one person is being so favored and loved over the other. So I find it troubling.
Right, but the facts of the person being loved or rejected are not obvious. That's one of the things this is a speech by a prophet, but actually the speech itself betrays that many people don't see it his way at all. He's saying that there are many Jews who don't think that they're loved by God. This is a set of propositions that the prophet is making that are not obvious to everybody else. Why does he say that Esau is cursed? That's why I told you that the Psalm 137. He's not interested in what happened, hundreds and hundreds of years before between the person named Esau and the person named Jacob. I mean, obviously he is interested, but he's not doing his analysis based on what he knows about that kid Esau. He's looking through this long view where Esau has turned out to be a terrible oppressor and destroyer of Israel. So that's the hatred. So when he projects that hatred into God, it's the hatred that he feels because they were dancing on the rooftops when our blood was being spilled. That's the emotional background of the prophecy. And then he's calling out to us, Jacob, and saying, God loves you, and yet you don't even know it. So he's trying to put out a certain perspective that really is not obvious to practically anybody here. Right? He's trying to give a certain reading of the reality. And he says, you know how I know that Esav is hated? Look at their land. Their land is blasted. It's wasteland now. They don't have anything anymore. They wanted to be this successful people, and they thought that the destruction of Israel and the destruction of our temple, that was going to be their leg up. And now look at them, barely 100 years afterwards, and they're a failed state. So clearly God does not love them and favor them, right? So he's seeing things very much from the way that he is analyzing the pieces in front of him. But
It's a dangerous analysis because the temple, after all, was destroyed. So does that mean God hated us? I mean, right? If
it
you're
was restored, but
right.
It was restored. And now he says to Esav, and if you think you're going to get restored,
right,
you've got another thing coming. That's the difference between the love and the hatred. The love doesn't mean that the troubles won't happen. It means that the troubles won't close the door to the rest of what might happen later. But when the troubles are the final, pronouncement, that's it. But, obviously, prophets have said things, and then, the next thing happens. So, but this is very harsh, very, very, very biting, bitter kind of stuff. And we need to leave some time for what does this mean for the reader? What does this do to read this, generation after generation after generation? But we've only read the first paragraph. So now let's see what happens, because if this was the whole thing, there would be one kind of effect that we would have to deal with. But now let's see what happens as he continues. I mean, there's a break here. There's a break here in the printing of our Eitz Chaim Chumash, right?
Mhm.
There's a little break between verse 5 and then the next in verse 6. They like two different paragraphs. In the prophets, there's no such thing, right? So take this as if he's not even taking a breath. After he finishes saying all that, now let's see what he says in verse 6.
A son should honor his father and a slave his master. Now, if I am a father, where is the honor due me? And if I am a master, where is the reverence due me? Said the Lord of hosts to you, O priests who scorn my name. But you ask, how have we scorned your name? You offer defiled food on my altar, but you ask, how have we defiled you? By saying, the table of the Lord can be treated with scorn. When you present a blind animal for sacrifice, it doesn't matter. When you present a lame or sick one, it doesn't matter. Just offer it to your governor. Will he accept you? Will he show you favor? Said the Lord of hosts. And now implore the favor of God. Will he be gracious to us? This is what you have done. Will he accept any of you?
Okay, so now let's understand there's a really abrupt turn here, and Malachi is talking to these wonderful beloved Jews, right? And he says, shame on you. What the heck is wrong with you? And God is completely incensed with you because you don't have you don't care at all, right? So after we had this whole puffing up of, raising up Jacob. Oh, Jacob is God's beloved. Esav is cursed by God. Now he turns around and he goes, look at you. You guys are such a disgrace. You're such an embarrassment. You're such you're terrible, right? And the beginning, right? Ben yechabedav ve'eved adonav, right? In the nature of things, children honor their parents. Slaves honor their masters. So what are you, Israel? Are you my children? Are you my servants? Either way, you don't treat me with any respect. I don't get no respect. This is what God is saying here, right? So this, this is this, like I say, this volte-face kind of thing. Does it have any connection with our Torah reading? There are no servants that play any role in this week's Torah reading, as opposed to last week. Last week, Abraham's servant plays like this major role, right? In this week, it's all very close up. If you think about like images, like a drama, TV, or whatever, this is all close up focus on the members of the family. And it's all about the children and the parents, right? Let's go back to Isaac. Why does Isaac love Esau?
He brings him meat.
Yeah, he's the dutiful, respectful son. And this is not lost on the sages. The sages, bought into the idea that Edom is Israel's enemy. Edom, by the time we get to the sages, to the rabbis, Edom has changed from Edom to the Romans. And the Romans, of course, have destroyed the second, temple. So, Edom has never done us any good, historically speaking, when we talk about Edom as an abstraction or as a people. But the rabbis write very feelingly about Esau as being the person who is so devoted to serving his father. And it comes straight out of the text. What does Isaac say? You always do give me such delicious food. You know what? I want to give you a blessing. Go out and do what you always do. You know my favorite dish. Make my favorite dish like you always do. So we get this very intimate portrait of a dutiful son. He goes out there, knocks himself out, hunting for his father. He's the obedient, good son who's fulfilling the commandment of honor your parents, right? We don't have that explicitly mentioned for Jacob. We say that we show that, he's a wholehearted person. He's Tom. He's perfect. He's quiet. He's not a hunter. We can not like hunters if we don't, so that could be a blemish on Esau. But we don't have him actually doing anything terrific to serve his parents. So in a certain sense, after we've got this whole cursing out of Edom, we have this now kind of turnaround where by implication, who are we going to, we're supposed to be the good guys and they're supposed to be the bad guys. And how is it really playing out? Let's keep going.
So can I just make one comment though? I mean, there's also this juxtaposition where Esau brings food just to his father because his father wants it. And when Jacob makes food and gives it to someone, it's to get something. So there really is this big juxtaposition about, the motivations, and yet Esau is viewed as this horrible person. Anyway.
Right.
Okay.
So again, Esau is viewed as a horrible person because of what happened historically later.
Right.
That's, it's not about the pure reading of the text in isolation, because it was impossible to read the text in isolation, because that wasn't our reality. Our reality was totally conditioned by how we were being treated by somebody named Edom in real life. It's hard for us to take that seriously because these are now ancient, forgotten realities. They're not our realities. But if we had, let's say a sacred text that extolled, that didn't extol, that told a story about a rivalry between the archetypical Jew and an archetypical German, we would be conditioned not to necessarily think that German is such a great human being, right?
Right.
That's our historical baggage. Edom as evil is the historical baggage that is being carried by Israel from, for hundreds and hundreds of years, right? Mid-5th century BCE, 2nd century CE. This is hundreds of years where Edom as a real entity, as a national entity, has clobbered, tortured, oppressed Israel. And then, of course, when Edom becomes Rome, and then it becomes the Christian church. So it's very, oh yeah, let's be very nice to Esav, Edom from 2,000 years ago. That kind of distance from the text just is a luxury that we can enjoy. They didn't enjoy that luxury. But let's see how this text goes, because it's going to start going it's going to have another little interesting twist.
The Lord of hosts has said, if only you would lock my doors and not kindle fire on my altar to no purpose. I take no pleasure in you, said the Lord of hosts, and I will accept no offering from you. For from where the sun rises to where it sets, my name is honored among the nations, and everywhere incense and pure oblation are offered to my name. For my name is honored among the nations, said the Lord of hosts. But you profane it when you say, the table of the Lord is defiled, and the food can be treated with scorn. You say, oh, what a bother. And so you degrade it, said the Lord of hosts. And you bring the stolen, the lame, and the sick, and you offer such an oblation. Will I accept it from you, said the Lord? A curse on the cheat who has an unblemished male in his flock, but for his vow sacrifices a blemished animal to the Lord. For I am a great king, said the Lord of hosts, and my name is revered among the nations.
Okay, so what information do we get from this? What is Malachi's view of actually what's going on out there in the rest of the world?
That other people show honor to God,
Right. Now,
and this people doesn't.
right. So now the shoe is on the other foot in so many ways here, because what Malachi is saying is that God is complaining that all those people out there that I don't have this covenant with, right? They're pagans, they're polytheists. They worship this God and that God and this God and that God. Do they throw me into the mix? Maybe they do, maybe they don't. And yet, this is the interpretation that Malachi is advancing is, and God says, you know what? I rather have their religious devotion than your garbage. Right? I have a temple here that's been supposedly established in my name, and you treat it like it's distasteful and oh, it's so much pain. What, we have to go to shul, and the services are so long, and this and that and the other thing. That's what he's saying. He's saying this is not anti-sacrifice. This is saying you're not giving me the right sacrifice. You don't pay for a good animal. You don't decide that only the best should go on the altar. You don't really put your all into that. And then I go out to Babylon, or I go to Edom, or I go to Syria, or I go to Africa, or I go anywhere in the world, and people in their religious devotion are all in. They're totally dedicated. And let's say they call me Zeus, or let's say they call me Baal. They do it with a whole heart. Where are you? Right? So if we just had in the first paragraph, Jacob, beloved, Esau, hated, right? Now, all of a sudden, we get this, this total contradiction in a certain way, where God says, all those hated people out there, they really love me. They really honor me. It's a machaya, right? It's the way it should be. And you guys don't get it. What is it? So this is Malachi's, really bitter way of creating that tension, that back and forth. He sets us up on this, high pedestal, and then says, well, so why don't you live up to it? You don't get it that God has given you all this love. You don't get it that God has given you all these blessings, right? Jacob and Esau are struggling over a blessing. What's it worth? So you got the blessing. How do you treat it? What are you doing with it? And let's go back to the food thing for a second, right? What God is saying is that food was really important, right? Isaac says, I'm going to bless you because you're going to make this beautiful dish for me. It's going to be delicious. I'm going to feel so good. I'm going to feel so grateful and so loving to you, and then I'll bless you. So Esau goes out there and so on. Then Rivka has to beat the clock and get the copy dish in there, but it's for the sake of getting the blessing. And now God is saying, you think that you can fool me? Right? So the echoes here are very, they're very close, to the inner, issues about this story, right? I'm not blind like Isaac. I'm not decrepit. I'm not going to be fooled. You can't substitute a stolen animal onto the altar and make believe that I won't notice. Right? And this, of course, is where you get into a little bit of a subtle thing about the ethics versus the ritual. But nevertheless, he says, the ritual is important. Do it right. And you guys don't do it right. Okay. We're gonna see if we can get through this. Yes.
Okay.
Chapter
And
2.
now, it's the bottom, yeah. And now, O priests, this charge is for you. Unless you obey, and unless you lay it to heart and do honor to my name, said the Lord of hosts, I will send a curse and turn your blessings into curses. Indeed. Yeah.
Right. I couldn't help it. Right.
Right.
So this is that theme. This is
Yeah.
this is back to that theme. And remember what the original blessing, which is supposed to be carried on from generation to generation, starting with Abraham. What does God say about blessings and curses? God says, anyone who blesses you will be blessed.
Right.
Anyone who curses you will be cursed.
Yeah.
Because you are a blessing to the world. And now God says, but if you don't live up to it, then I'll turn it around. Right? Then the blessings will turn into curses.
Indeed, I have turned them into curses because you do not lay it to heart. I will put your seed under a ban, and I will strew dung upon your faces, the dung of your festal sacrifices, and you shall be carried out to its heap. Know then that I have sent this charge to you that my covenant with Levi may endure, said the Lord of hosts. I had with him a covenant of life and well-being, which I gave to him, and of reverence, which he showed me, for he stood in awe of my name. Proper rulings were in his mouth, and nothing perverse was on his lips. He served me with complete loyalty and held the many back from iniquity. For the lips of a priest guard knowledge, and men seek rulings from his mouth, for he is a messenger of the Lord of hosts.
So there's that Malach, the messenger at the end of this Torah.
Yeah.
And now the Malach is identified as the loyal priest, the faithful priest. The one who does do the service to God with the right feeling in their heart, with the right attention to the details, with the right sense of quality that needs to be given to make a gift to God in the right way, and then to serve the people. Unfortunately, again, our English is very wonderful, but doesn't give us the echoes that are in the Hebrew. Verse 6, proper rulings were in his mouth. The Hebrew is Torat emet hayta befihu. A Torah of truth was in his mouth, or is in his mouth. Ve'avla lo nimtza b'sfatav, nothing perverse on his lips. And then later on, the last two words, that men seek rulings from his mouth. Ve'torah yivakshu mipihu. Right? This is about Torah, ruling, and rulings is all fine, and guidance. but in the end, it's that laden word Torah and a Torah of truth. And what is one of the great problems with our Torah portion story? What's Jacob's relationship to truth?
Yeah, he's deceitful.
Right, he seems
He's
to
not
be, as
truthful, yeah.
Esau says, and Jacob says, Isaac says, your brother took away the blessing with deceit. The mirma, not truthful. He wasn't truthful. And here we have this emphasis that the only way forward, if you really want to serve God, if you want to be God's messenger, if you want to be God's agent, it's another word of messenger, malach. If you want to be the force that is doing God's work in the world, it's got to be through truth. So the paradoxes, right? The complications here are, are embedded in the text. Yes, Malachi is Israel's prophet, right? And God's messenger to Israel. And Israel has been chosen by God. The problem is that we never, live up to it. We keep on failing, and we have to do better. And that's the prophetic message all the time. You can do better. That's why I'm yelling at you. If you couldn't do any better, I would give up. But you can, and you must. And therefore, the beginning of the story is our Torah portion, and then the unfolding through history is in our Haftarah. Right? Will our mouths have truth in what they say, or are we going to be, trying to pull a fast one on other people and on God? Is that the way we want to be or not? This is the challenge that Malachi puts out. Final comments, anybody?
Well, I think it raises the issue about what does it mean to be chosen? Because God may choose us, but we have to make a choice as well. And then also I think about Esau, crying to his father, can't you bless me too? Is there only one of us who can be blessed? Can't we, and that sort of echoes here with, you guys aren't doing anything, and look how wonderful these other people are. They may call me by a different name. So I think that there's a lot of echoes here.
Yes, Lou.
And yet the chosen people, Abraham is the one who argued with God. Jacob is the one who wrestled with God. I mean, they're partly that in that kind of honored patriarchal place, partly because of their not blind acceptance.
Right. That's what I was. Is the word? Let's look at the word at the very first word of the Haftarah, right? In the Hebrew, it's masa.
Nasa.
Masa, right? So translated as pronouncement. So Sarita, you have the note there?
Yeah, it says, Masa, often translated burden, on the assumption that this is the word that the prophet had to carry to the people.
Right.
The term refers to prophecy and is used to indicate the taking up of a speech.
Right, but it also literally means a burden.
Burden.
And
yeah.
that's what I would say back to, to Lou's point.
Yeah.
This is this burden. It's a heavy burden, and we drop it all the time. And then we have to keep on picking it up, and we have to figure out how to carry it in a way that we won't break it, and we won't let it slip again, and we still fail. And then that's the burden. And sometimes we do drop it. And whether it's Abraham or Isaac or Jacob, Sarah, Rebecca, Rachel, they happen to be human beings, shocking as we are. And yet not every human being takes on the burden. Not every human being takes on, and they did, for better or for worse. David, and then we're going to finish.
Is it the same shoresh as naso, to lift?
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah.
Okay. You lift the
All
burden.
right. Good. All right. Yasher koach to everybody.
Thank you.